The murmurs died almost instantly, as if her very presence pressed an invisible hand over every mouth. The black mother adjusted the baby in her arms, her movements gentle, deliberate, steady. She didn't look around for approval, she only searched for her seat. Still, eyes trailed her, whispers crawling behind cupped hands. First class. A voice muttered low, almost swallowed by the hum of the engines. Another chuckle followed, clipped and sharp. She heard them. She always did. But she kept walking, her chin held in quiet defiance. Narration filled the silence in her mind. They don't expect me here, they never do. To them, first class is a gate I wasn't meant to walk through. The flight attendant, stiff in her pressed uniform, froze midway down the aisle. Her smile thinned. She leaned toward another passenger, whispering just loud enough. Must be a mistake. The mother paused, tightening her grip on the infant. Excuse me, she said softly, her voice carrying more strength than volume. Is there a problem? The attendant blinked, caught between professionalism and prejudice. No, of course not, she replied, but the hesitation lingered. Passengers exchanged looks, some curious, others complicit in their silence. A businessman coughed into his fist, eyes dropping. A woman shifted uncomfortably in her seat. No one spoke for her, yet the tension stretched across the cabin like turbulence. She lowered into her seat, smoothing the blanket over her baby. The silence felt heavier than words, filled with judgments. No one dared to speak aloud, and still, she whispered to her child, a smile touching her lips. We belong here. It wasn't just a statement, it was a promise, one the cabin couldn't ignore. Her hand trembled slightly as she adjusted her baby's blanket, the hush in the cabin pressing down harder than the air itself. The flight attendant leaned in, lips curving but not kindly. Ma'am, she said, her voice clipped. Are you sure you're in the right section? Alina lifted her eyes slowly. My ticket says seat 2. Her tone was even steady, though her heart raced at the weight of 100 unseen stares. The attendant's smirk deepened. First class isn't usually family-friendly. The pause lingered like a blade. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable elsewhere. Elena's throat tightened. Elsewhere, she repeated softly, as though testing the cruelty of the word. The woman's smile stayed, but her eyes hardened. It's a long flight. Passengers here expect a certain standard. Alina didn't flinch. She smoothed the baby's curls, her silence saying more than protest. For a moment, the attendant shifted, her own confidence flickering against that calm dot from across the aisle. A man coughed deliberately, muttering, "Let the woman sit." His voice wasn't loud, but it cracked the air enough for others to stir. Met the attendant's gaze again, quiet but unyielding. I didn't ask for permission. I have a seat. The smirk faltered. A sharp inhale, a glance toward the other passengers, then back to the woman whose calm presence felt heavier than defiance. The attendant's practiced arrogance bent under the weight of silence. She straightened, murmuring, "Of course, enjoy your flight." Alina adjusted her baby again, her dignity unbroken, while whispers shifted no longer about her, but about the woman who had tried to cut her down. The attendant stepped back, her smile thinner now, and something unsettled flickered behind her eyes. ChatGPT said. Her smirk didn't fade, it sharpened. Alina shifted her baby closer, the soft coo of her child the only sound breaking the heavy pause. Then came the words, low but clear, cutting like glass. People like you don't belong here. It wasn't shouted. It didn't need to be. The cruelty lived in its calm delivery. A few passengers flinched, but no one spoke. A man in the next seat cleared his throat and looked at his watch. Another woman pulled her scarf tighter, pretending not to hear. Silence became the crowd's shield. Alina swallowed hard. Her lips parted, but no words came. She could feel every eye that refused to meet hers, every heart choosing comfort over courage. Excuse me. Her voice trembled, yet carried weight. The attendant leaned closer, smile unbothered. You heard me. First class is for people who know how to act like they belong. Elena's baby stirred, sensing the tension. She stroked his back, more for her own steadiness than his. I paid for this seat, she whispered. Money doesn't buy class. The woman's words were sugar-laced poison. Alina looked around, faces turned away, heads down. Not one allied. The weight of isolation pressed harder than the insult itself. For a moment, she thought of standing, of screaming. But instead, she stayed still. Her silence wasn't weakness, it was survival. Her composure made the attendant's smile twitch, just slightly, like a mask slipping, and that tiny crack told Alina something important. Arrogance only looked powerful until it was forced to face dignity it couldn't break. The cabin didn't breathe. A baby's soft sigh was the only sound in the storm of silence. The attendant's smirk faltered when Alina didn't move, didn't flinch. She simply shifted the baby against her chest, smoothing the blanket with a calm hand. The silence wrapped around the cabin, heavier than any raised voice could have been. Passengers shifted uneasily, stealing glances, waiting for her to lash out. She didn't. Did you hear me? The attendant pushed, her voice louder now, cracking at the edges. People like you. Elena's gaze lifted, steady, unbroken. She didn't answer. The pause stretched long enough to make the woman swallow her own words. You think ignoring me makes you better? The attendant muttered, but softer now. Say something. Alina drew in a quiet breath. My baby is sleeping. That was all. Her voice low, measured. Almost a whisper, but it landed sharper than any shout. The attendant blinked, her jaw tightening. Around them, the silence thickened. A man coughed. A woman shifted in her seat. The air felt different, charged, as if everyone was waiting for a fall. Ma'am, this isn't about. The attendant tried again, but her tone stumbled. Alina didn't reply. She only brushed her child's hair back and looked ahead, as if the woman standing over her didn't exist. That quiet defiance stung more than anger ever could. The attendant's hands fidgeted with her tablet. Rules are rules, she muttered. Yet the words no longer carried weight. Her posture shrank as the stillness pressed against her. Elena's silence wasn't weakness, it was presence. Every second she refused to rise, the power shifted, and though no one clapped or spoke, the cabin felt it, the smirk cracking, the arrogance trembling, all undone by a mother who chose not to fight with noise but with composure. A man coughed softly, shifting in his seat. Another woman fixed her eyes on the floor, clutching her handbag tighter. The cabin was filled with a silence that no announcement could cover. Alina adjusted her baby again, her face calm, her breathing steady. That composure stung more than any insult. Unbelievable, someone whispered from the row behind, just low enough not to be heard by the attendant. Another voice, hushed but firm, followed. She didn't deserve that. The flight attendant straightened her jacket, trying to look unfazed, but her hands betrayed her, trembling as she adjusted. The service cart, she snapped. Focus on your seats, not your business. A passenger near the aisle muttered, we saw everything. His words landed heavy, not loud, but cutting. Alina didn't move. She didn't answer. Her silence made them feel the weight of what had been done, and it hung over the cabin like thick air. One man tried to meet her eyes, but when she glanced his way, he lowered his gaze. Not out of shame for her, but for himself, because he had done nothing. The others carried the same quiet guilt, etched in their downcast looks. The attendant forced a fake smile, bending toward a passenger. Let's move on, shall we? Her voice cracked, betraying her, but it was too late. Even without phones recording, every mind in that cabin had saved the image. The slap, the arrogance, the silence. Alina leaned back, rocking her baby gently, as if the chaos around her no longer reached her. And though the passengers looked away, none of them could erase what they'd witnessed. The injustice had burned itself into memory, a story they would carry, whether they admitted it or not. ChatGPT said. Her baby shifted in her arms, a soft whimper that cut through the stale silence. Alina pressed her lips to the child's forehead, steadying herself. The flight attendant avoided her gaze now, fussing with the cart, pretending nothing had happened. Passengers shifted in their seats, some pretending to sleep, others stealing quick glances. Elena's voice was low, but it carried. You struck a mother holding her child, and you think that will disappear into silence? The attendant froze, knuckles white against the cart handle. I didn't. You did, Elena interrupted. No anger in her tone, only fact. Her calmness unsettled the cabin more than shouting ever could. A man 2 rows ahead muttered, unbelievable. Another hushed him, fear thick in the air. No one wanted to be pulled into the storm, yet no one would forget. The attendant finally turned, lips trembling with a smile that couldn't land. Ma'am, let's move on, all right. Alina studied her, unblinking. The pause stretched until the woman looked away first. Inside, Elena's heart raced, but she wouldn't show it. Not here, not now. Her silence was heavier than screams, heavier than threats. She adjusted the blanket around her baby, eyes never leaving the attendant. The air grew taut. Those who watched felt it too. Something unspoken passed between them, a line drawn that couldn't be erased. The attendant's hands shook slightly as she pushed the cart down the aisle. Alina leaned back in her seat, never breaking eye contact until the woman disappeared behind the curtain. Her gaze lingered long after. It wasn't rage burning there, it was something deeper. A promise. And though no one around her understood, every soul on that plane felt the weight of it. Her baby finally settled against her chest. Elena let the hum of the engines blur the present. The sting on her cheek was fresh, but her mind wandered to older wounds, ones that never left marks, yet shaped her silence now. She remembered the airport 2 years ago. Random check, the guard had muttered, eyes fixed on her skin. Not her suitcase. She'd smiled faintly then, though inside she knew the truth. Another time, boarding early with her infant, a flight attendant had sighed loud enough for everyone to hear, always slowing the line. She never fought those moments, just tucked them away, each one stacked quietly, like stones pressed on her chest. Her thoughts snapped back when a woman across the aisle whispered, "I'm sorry you have to go through this." Elena's eyes lifted, surprised. "I'm used to it," she replied. Softly. The woman shook her head. "That's the saddest part. You shouldn't have to be." Elena's lips parted, but no words followed. The truth sat heavy in her throat. She wanted to tell her how many times she swallowed indignities, how every scar felt invisible because the world refused to call them scars. Instead, she just looked down at her child. "He won't grow up used to it," she finally whispered, almost to herself. The woman's eyes softened. "Then you're stronger than you think." Elena didn't answer. Her silence carried years of hurt, but also a promise, the same promise that lingered in her stare at the attendant. The scars of her past weren't fading. They were gathering, quietly shaping a storm. And this time, she would not be the one bending. The murmurs began like soft cracks in glass, spreading before anyone realized how deep they ran. Reporters moved through the gate area, pens hovering, microphones waiting. Passengers who had stayed quiet earlier suddenly leaned closer. "She shouldn't talk to her like that," a woman muttered, her voice low but steady. The man beside her nodded. "Not the first time I've seen her snap at others before. Always the same kind of people." Their words hung heavy, not accusations yet, but confessions long buried. Elena sat nearby, baby asleep against her chest, her silence louder than their whispers. She didn't look at them, but every syllable reached her. Another voice, older, hesitant, spoke up. "I filed a complaint last year. Nothing changed." They brushed it off, said, "I misunderstood." He let out a brittle laugh. "Guess we all misunderstood, huh?" A reporter leaned in. "Do you want your name on record?" The man hesitated, eyes darting. "No, just write it down. People need to know. That's enough." The shift was subtle but undeniable. Fear was giving way to shame. Those who once looked away were realizing silence had always been a kind of choice. Elena finally raised her head, her eyes calm, not pleading. Someone caught her gaze and quickly lowered theirs. Another held it a moment longer before looking away. Cheeks flushed. She held her ground without a word. One passenger whispered, "And that's what broke them." In that quiet fracture, the balance tilted. Not in her outburst, because she never gave them one, but in their own reflection. For the first time, the silence wasn't hers to carry. It belonged to them. Hum of the terminal still clung to everyone's nerves when a young woman, clutching her phone, finally spoke. "It's already out there," she whispered, sliding the screen across the table. The grainy video showed everything: the slap, the cruel smirk, and Elena holding her baby without raising her voice. No, that's not deleted." The attendant stammered, face pale. "It's too late," another passenger muttered. "People have seen it." Elena sat quietly, her baby's head resting against her shoulder. She hadn't asked for this. Her silence in that moment was heavier than any scream could have been. The attendant's voice cracked. "This could ruin me. You don't understand." "No," a man cut her off, his tone flat but sharp. "We do understand. That's why no one stayed quiet this time." Elena's eyes shifted toward him. She didn't thank him, didn't nod, just kept her gaze steady like steel wrapped in calm. Reporters who had gathered began murmuring questions, their recorders thrust forward. "Ma'am, did you say anything back?" "No," Elena answered softly. "I didn't have to." The attendant's lips trembled. She wanted to argue, to explain, but the weight of silence around her left no space. The young woman with the phone whispered again, almost to herself, "It's everywhere now." And she was right. By nightfall, the clip was on millions of screens. Elena's quiet composure magnified into a force the attendant had never imagined. The cruel act, once a private humiliation, had become public reckoning, and Elena, with nothing but restraint, had turned the world's gaze exactly where it belonged. The clip refused to fade. By morning, Elena's calm face had been replayed millions of times, and beneath the video, words began stacking like stones. "On a grave long overdue, they did that to me too," one woman wrote. Her post carried no anger, just exhaustion. Soon after, another voice surfaced. I worked there for 10 years. This wasn't new. The silence that the airline once relied on had cracked, and the cracks widened into a flood. Inside her kitchen, Elena scrolled quietly. Her husband leaned against the counter, watching her chest rise and fall. "They're not just talking about you," he said. Her hand trembled on the screen. "I see it. All these names, all these stories." The common threads were no longer random complaints. They were testimonies, passengers remembering being shamed, attendants recalling orders to smile and move on, mothers clutching children while swallowing words. A man posted, "I filed a complaint 3 years ago. Never heard back." Another, "My sister was dragged off a flight. Nobody believed her." Elena whispered, more to herself than anyone, "They buried them." Her husband's jaw tightened. Not anymore. For the first time, the airline wasn't in control of the story. The internet had turned memory into evidence, shame into solidarity. Even those who once stayed silent now felt permission to speak. Small comments multiplied into threads, threads into testimonies, testimonies into movements. Each voice added weight, and the airline's carefully polished image began to buckle. Elena set her phone down, eyes wet but steady. "It's not just my fight anymore," she said. Her husband placed a hand over hers. The room felt heavy, not with defeat, but with the sense that something irreversible had already begun. The murmurs from the online storm hadn't quieted when Marcus finally spoke, his voice steady but carrying weight. "Elena," he said softly, placing a hand over hers, "you've carried this long enough." Her eyes glistened, not from weakness, but from years of swallowing insult after insult. "They won't believe me," she whispered. "They never do." "They don't need to believe you," Marcus replied. His words were plain, almost casual, yet they pressed against the silence like a stone on glass. Elena searched his face. "You've stayed quiet for so long. Why now?" He didn't answer immediately. He let the moment breathe, let the faint hum of the refrigerator and the tapping rain fill the pause. "Because silence has done its job," he said finally. "It built what they can't see, and now, it's time they see it." She studied him, her heartbeat steadying. For years, Marcus had moved like a shadow, late-night calls, discreet meetings, no loud announcements, no thirst for recognition. People assumed he was just another man in a well-tailored suit. They had no idea Marcus the airline. She asked, hesitant. He nodded once, slow and firm. "More than the airline, the board, the routes, the contracts. I didn't build this to boast. I built it so no one could touch us again." Her lips trembled, caught between relief and disbelief. "And all this time, you said nothing." "I was waiting for them to write their own ending," he said quietly, his eyes fixed on hers. "Now, we'll hand them the truth." Elena lowered her gaze, a soft exhale escaping her. For the first time in years, silence no longer felt like surrender. It felt like power. Elena sat at the edge of the bed, her hands trembling as she tried to steady her breathing. The room was dim, the hum of the city muted behind heavy curtains. Her voice came out raw, softer than a whisper, but it cut through the silence like glass. "It's not the first time," she said, her eyes fixed on the floor, "but I want it to be the last." Marcus didn't move at first. He leaned back, in his chair, his face unreadable, but the weight of his silence filled the space between them. Elena's chest tightened. His calm had always been her anchor, yet tonight it felt like a storm held back. "You don't have to fight for me," she murmured, almost apologetic. Marcus finally lifted his gaze. "I'm not fighting for you," he said quietly. "I'm fighting because they think they can keep doing this. To you, to people who look like you, like us." Elena's throat closed, a tear slipping before she could hide it. "What if nothing changes?" For a moment, Marcus said nothing. His stillness was sharper than anger. Then, slowly, he leaned forward. "It will," he promised, his voice low, steady. "Because this time, it must end." The room grew heavier, the air thick with unspoken resolve. Elena wiped her face with the back of her hand, nodding faintly. "I don't want revenge," she said. "I just want to breathe without fear." Marcus reached for her hand, holding it firmly. "Then that's what we'll make sure of." And though no further words passed, the silence itself turned into an oath unbreakable. Final, a quiet declaration that tomorrow would not look like yesterday. Marcus read the statement twice, jaw tightening with each line. Elena sat across from him, her baby asleep against her chest, the glow from the phone screen making her look even more tired. The airline's words felt less like an apology and more like another slap. "Misunderstanding," Marcus muttered, his voice low but sharp. "That's what they call it." Elena didn't answer at first. Her silence carried more weight than shouting could. Finally, she whispered, "They never see us, not even when we bleed." He leaned forward, the anger in his eyes restrained, but burning. "This isn't about regret. It's about covering themselves. They think this ends with a press release." Alina shook her head. "No, the world is watching, and they know it." There was a pause. Marcus exhaled, forcing calm. "We'll let them keep talking. Every word exposes them more." The baby stirred softly, breaking the silence. Alina adjusted her, whispering almost to herself, "I wanted a simple life. Not headlines. Not battles." Marcus's gaze softened. "I know. But maybe this fight isn't ours alone anymore. People are angry because they see themselves in you. They see their mothers, their wives, their daughters." Alina looked back at the statement, lips pressing into a thin line. "Their apology isn't healing. It's proof." Marcus nodded slowly. "Proof they're guilty. Proof they're afraid." For the first time that night, a faint strength returned to her eyes. "Then we don't let them bury it under polite words." Marcus's voice was steady. "No, we don't." And in that quiet, the weight shifted from silence to resolve, from apology to accountability, that the statement was meant to calm the storm, but instead it fanned the fire. Reporters replayed the words, families shared the video, and the silence of the airline's leaders grew heavier. Inside the polished glass walls of their boardroom, unease spread like smoke. "Damage control," one executive muttered, his voice thin. "It's not damage control anymore," another replied, staring at a stack of printed emails. "It's survival." The CEO leaned forward, his jaw tight. "How many complaints are we talking about?" The room froze. A compliance officer adjusted her glasses, avoiding eye contact. "Too many. Some buried, some settled quietly." "God," someone whispered. The air thickened. They had built their empire on denial, each cover-up stacked neatly like bricks. Now, every brick was cracking. "If this gets out, it already is." A younger director interrupted, his voice trembling. "Social media's digging. They're pulling up old testimonies. The patterns are obvious." The CEO's fist hit the table, not with rage, but with fear disguised as control. "We hold the line, deny, delay, distract. That's how this works." But his words carried no weight anymore. Even his closest allies could hear the edge in his tone. A silence followed, filled with the weight of years unspoken. One executive leaned back, whispering almost to himself, "We thought we were untouchable." No one corrected him, because for the first time, they all felt it, the walls closing in, the whispers louder than their titles, and the truth pressing harder than their defenses. What was once power now tasted like panic, and in that silence, they realized the empire was already trembling. The room stayed thick with unease after the lawyers' voices fell silent. Then, almost too softly, came a trembling "I can't keep quiet anymore." Heads turned. It was Daniel, the HR officer who had always kept to himself. His hands shook as he clutched a folder no one had noticed before. "You don't have to say anything, Daniel," one executive muttered sharply. "I do," he whispered back, louder this time, "because every time I signed off on a file, I knew what I was doing. I knew what we were all doing." His voice cracked, and the silence cut deeper than any accusation. Someone leaned forward, voice tight. "Be careful." Daniel's eyes brimmed. "Careful? You think I haven't been careful? I buried complaints that would have ended careers. I watched women walk out of here crying, watched black employees get pushed aside, ignored, and we stamped, resolved on their pain. No one breathed." A lawyer finally snapped. "This isn't the time, it's the only time," Daniel shot back, surprising even himself. "I kept quiet because I wanted to belong, but all I belonged to was a machine built to erase people, and now it's collapsing." His words hung heavy. The executives looked smaller than their titles, trapped in their own silence. One of them muttered, almost pleading, "You'll destroy us all." Daniel lowered his gaze, clutching the folder closer. Maybe that's what should have happened. A long time ago, he didn't look at them again. The truth had already left his lips, and no one could pull it back. The room didn't erupt. It simply sank the weight of his confession, turning every whisper into guilt too loud to escape. The room seemed smaller now, suffocating under truths too long buried. The HR officer's trembling words still echoed, and silence pressed heavy. Then a voice, low but sharp, cut through. So it wasn't just her, a woman in the back whispered, her eyes burned, though her tone never rose. "We filed complaints, dozens, and every single one disappeared." Heads turned. The flight attendant who once smirked now sat frozen, her face pale. The husband, quiet until now, leaned forward, his voice steady, cold. "You thought this was one mistake. No, This is your culture, your brand. Every ignored voice, every silenced report. It built this empire. The CEO, usually composed, fumbled for words. We followed procedure. The man snapped, eyes narrowing. You buried people's dignity under paper trails. You made silence your business model. No one moved. Even the reporters, pens still, watched the collapse unravel in real time. What started with one slap had grown into something monstrous too large to deny. The cracks widened with every word, every shared nod from employees who once kept their heads down. A younger worker stepped forward, voice raw. We were told to shut up, or lose everything. Some of us couldn't afford to fight. His admission hung like smoke, thick and choking. The mother, still holding her child, finally spoke. Her tone was calm, but each word landed like iron. You thought humiliating me was small, but it exposed all of this. You can't hide behind uniforms anymore. Not behind walls, or titles, or fear. The CEO's shoulders slumped. For the first time, he looked fragile. The empire he ruled trembled not from shouts, but from the quiet power of truth refusing to stay buried. The microphone squeaked as the airline CEO forced a smile. We regret the unfortunate incident. The matter has been addressed internally. The doors opened, not hurried, not loud, just a steady push. Every head turned. Alina walked in, her baby resting quietly against her shoulder. Marcus followed, his expression calm but unreadable. Silence rippled across the room, slicing through the staged performance. Alina didn't rush. She stood there, steady, eyes locking, with the same executives who had tried to bury her pain. For a moment, nobody breathed. The CEO cleared his throat. This is a private. Marcus spoke softly, but his words carried more weight than any microphone. Private. After what your staff did to my wife, after humiliating her in front of passengers. No, this belongs in the light. Reporters, pens froze mid-air. Cameras shifted focus. The executives shifted uneasily, faces draining of color. Elena's voice was quiet, almost tender. You apologized to each other, but not to me, not to my child. She adjusted her baby slightly, her gaze unwavering. Do you understand what that silence feels like? A nervous cough from the front row. The CEO stammered. Mrs. Don't. Marcus interrupted, his tone firm but controlled. Names won't save you. Policies won't save you. Humanity. Might. The room grew smaller, the air heavier. A board member whispered, we should pause, but no one moved. Elena lowered her eyes briefly, then raised them again, stronger. We didn't come here for revenge. We came to remind you your empire was built on trust, and today that trust collapsed. No shouting followed, no applause, just silence thicker than any noise. And in that silence, every mask began to crack. The CEO's voice dragged on, words rehearsed and hollow. We regret the incident. It was a misunderstanding. Elena's calm tone sliced through, quiet but undeniable. This wasn't misunderstanding, it was humiliation. The microphones caught her voice, clear as glass. The room stilled. Executives stiffened in their seats, papers shifting like nervous hands. Samantha's smirk faltered, just slightly, but enough. Marcus placed a hand on Elena's shoulder. She didn't glance at him, her eyes stayed forward. The CEO blinked, faltering. Mrs. Daniels. You don't get to soften it, Elena said, voice steady. Your employee struck me while I held my child, and everyone here watched me paint it as if I provoked it. The silence stretched heavy. Reporters leaned in, pens hovering. Samantha shifted, her voice clipped. She's exaggerating. It was. Elena turned, locking eyes with her. Do you remember what you said after? People like you always make trouble. That wasn't policy, that was hate. A collective breath filled the room. No shouting, no chaos, just the weight of truth hanging sharp in the air. Asterisk. The CEO's hands gripped the podium tighter. We will address this matter. Elena's voice cut in again, softer now. Address it, or admit it. His throat bobbed. Around them, the board members stared downward, as if their ties had grown too tight. Asterisk. For the first time, Samantha had no answer. Her lips parted, then closed again. Elena's calmness pressed harder than anger could. She wasn't pleading, she wasn't shouting, she was exposing. The stage no longer belonged to the company, it belonged to the woman they tried to silence, who now made silence their prison. In that silence, power shifted. Marcus stood still, hands resting lightly on the table. The silence that followed Elena's words pressed on everyone. Executives shifted uncomfortably, their rehearsed smiles cracking. Samantha forced a cough, as if to clear away the sting, but it lingered. Marcus's voice came low, steady. Enough. of this performance. Let's stop pretending who holds the strings here. The CEO blinked. I assure you, Mr. Hayes, we take matters. You don't need to assure me, Marcus cut in. His tone never rose. This airline, these flights, the staff you manage, the uniforms you wear, they belong to us now. The words struck, like stone dropping in still water. Executives froze, pens halted, mid-note, and the air shifted. Samantha's face drained, her smirk collapsing into disbelief. You what? She stammered. Marcus leaned slightly forward, calm as ever. Ownership, transferred months ago. Every decision you thought you controlled has been under our eyes. And after today, the way my wife and child were treated, I'm not just watching, I'm acting. The CEO's mouth opened, but no sound formed. He glanced around the room for rescue, none came. The executive's silence spoke louder than any defense. Samantha's voice cracked. I didn't know. You didn't care to know, Alina replied softly, each word cutting deeper than Marcus's revelation. No one dared to interrupt again. The weight of truth pinned the room still. For the first time, dignity towered over arrogance, and the balance of power turned with quiet, unstoppable force. Marcus's final words hung heavy. Remember this moment. Power isn't loud. It's who remains standing when the noise fades. And in that fading silence, Samantha's trembling hands betrayed what pride could no longer hold. ChatGPT said. Her lips moved, but no words came. Samantha's fingers twisted against each other, desperate for something to hold on to. The room had gone heavy, still, every pair of eyes fixed on her. Waiting, Alina, she whispered, but her voice broke. Alina did not answer. She stood steady, her baby resting calmly in her arms, her silence louder than any reply. I didn't mean. Samantha's words scattered like broken glass. Her hands shook as if the very uniform she wore burned against her skin. Marcus's gaze did not waver. You meant every moment, he said, quiet but unflinching. And now, everyone sees it. The executives kept their heads lowered. Some shifted uneasily in their chairs, but no one spoke in her defense. Power, once hers, had drained completely. Samantha's chest rose sharply. She looked at the floor, then at the walls. Anywhere but Alina, please. She tried again, but the sound thinned out, barely reaching past her lips. Elena's calm became unbearable. It wasn't anger, it wasn't revenge. It was dignity that refused to bend, and that was heavier than rage could ever be. A long silence held, broken only by the faint hum of the air conditioner. Finally, Samantha dropped her gaze, her shoulders caving inward. The arrogance she carried like armor slipped off her completely. No one clapped, no one shouted. The quiet itself was the verdict. Marcus stepped closer to Alina, his hand brushing hers gently, steadying her. We don't need to say anything more, he murmured. And he was right. Samantha's trembling silence was already the loudest confession. The moment closed, not with victory shouted, but with dignity standing, unshaken, while arrogance dissolved into nothing. Her heels clicked on the polished floor, each step dragging, heavier than the last. No one moved aside this time. A week ago, Samantha's presence could split a hallway in two. Now, people barely shifted, their eyes sliding away like glass shutting out a storm. Morning, she muttered to a passing coworker. The woman didn't stop, didn't even blink, just walked past as if air had spoken. Samantha's throat tightened. You heard me, she whispered, more to herself than anyone. At the counter, a young attendant cleared his throat. I'll get someone else to assist you, he said, backing away without meeting her eyes. Her fingers clenched around her bag strap. I trained you, she said under her breath, but the words fell flat, swallowed by the quiet. In the break room, two colleagues laughed softly. When she entered, their voices died. Silence wrapped the space, thicker than smoke. One of them stood, coffee still steaming, and left without a word. Samantha forced a smile. Is this how it's going to be? Her voice cracked, though she tried to keep it steady. Neither answered. The silence stung more than insults ever could. Inside, shame gnawed like fire under her skin. She longed for someone to scream at her, to fight, to give her anger, to hold on to. But there was nothing, just the echo of her own breathing, too loud in rooms that had once carried her voice like authority. Walking out, her reflection caught in a glass panel. Uniform pressed, hair knitty yet hollow eyes stared back, stripped of weight. The applause that once followed her rank had vanished. What remained was heavier, colder, silence that did not forgive. The uniform lay across the chair, untouched, as though it belonged to someone else. Samantha sat on the edge of her bed, staring at it. The sharp creases used to make her proud, used to remind her that she mattered. Now, they mocked her. Her daughter leaned against the doorway, arms folded. You still keeping it? The tone was flat, but it pierced sharper than anger. Samantha swallowed. It's just clothes. No, it's what you did in it. The words hung heavy. For a moment, Samantha couldn't look up. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. When she finally met her daughter's eyes, she saw not rage, but disappointment. That hurt worse. I thought you'd be different, her daughter whispered, voice trembling. You always told me respect everyone, no matter what. Samantha started, then stopped. Every excuse collapsed in her throat. Her daughter's stare didn't soften. But you didn't. The quiet pressed in again. Samantha's chest tightened, not from pride now, but shame. She wanted to say she was sorry, but even that felt too small. Finally, she murmured, I don't know how to undo it. You can't, her daughter replied, turning slightly, as though the room itself had become unbearable. But you can stop pretending it didn't happen. The uniform, still hanging, seemed to watch them both. Samantha lowered her head, realizing it wasn't fabric anymore. Was a witness, a reminder she couldn't fold away. Her daughter walked off, leaving the faintest echo of footsteps. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was a verdict, and Samantha felt, more than ever, that she was the one standing trial. The phone buzzed on the nightstand, lighting up with another headline. Elena's name was everywhere, her courage, her composure, her unshakable dignity. Samantha stared at the screen until her reflection blurred into the words. Her daughter's voice drifted from the doorway. Mum, they're saying things are changing because of her. Samantha turned slowly. I know. She's meeting with leaders, with lawyers. Everyone's listening now. The girl hesitated, eyes dropping. It should have been you helping, not hurting. Samantha swallowed hard. I thought I was protecting the job. I thought rules mattered more than people. The silence, after her words, was heavier than any argument. Downstairs, the television hummed with another segment. A news anchor praised the airline's reforms, new training, accountability, a public apology. Other companies were now scrambling to review their policies. Samantha sank into the couch, listening, feeling like a ghost in her own living room. Don't even mention me, she whispered. Why would they? Her daughter replied softly. This isn't your story anymore. The words landed like a verdict. Samantha nodded, a slow, resigned motion. She had lost her place not only at the airline but in the narrative that defined it on the screen. Elena appeared briefly, her baby in her arms, surrounded by cameras but still calm. She didn't gloat, she didn't even speak much. She simply stood there, and the world shifted around her. Samantha lowered the volume. The world moves on, she said, almost to herself. With or without me. Her daughter didn't answer. She just walked away quietly, leaving Samantha in the dim light of the television, watching a justice she could no longer claim, only witness. Elena sat by the window, her baby resting against her chest. The soft hum of the city outside contrasted with the silence in her heart. She remembered the chaos of that flight, the slap that once burned her cheek, the whispers that tried to define her. Now, there was none of that, only quiet. Her husband stepped in, pausing at the sight of them. You're calmer, he murmured, almost as if afraid to break the moment. I am, Elena replied. Her fingers traced the baby's tiny hand. It's strange. Justice came, but not how people expect. No cameras here, no applause, just peace. He lowered himself into the chair across from her. Do you feel like it's over? Elena's eyes lingered on the child in her arms. Over, no, but I don't need to fight every battle with noise. Sometimes silence says more. She paused, then added softly, dignity wins louder than hate. He leaned back, studying her. People will remember what she did, but they'll remember you more for how you carried it. Elena didn't answer right away. She kissed her baby's forehead instead, letting the words hang. The child stirred, safe, unbothered by the weight of the world. Outside, the city kept moving, unaware of the quiet victory in that room. Racism had screamed, but it collapsed not in courts or headlines, only here. In the refusal to bow, her husband finally whispered, You've already won. Elena gave a faint smile. No speeches, no anger, just the unshakable truth resting in her arms. And in that silence, hate had no place left to stand.